Hey everyone, welcome to the All American Dad podcast. I'm your host, Jimmy Page. I'm here for another episode where I interview dads who love being dads. My next guest is no exception. He's a dear friend of mine. I've heard his story a couple times, and every time I've heard it, it's blown my socks off. So I'm excited to be able to give him the platform to share his story, and I hope this blesses somebody. I know it will. But let's get right to it. Welcome, my guest, Mr. Michael Elliott.
Thanks, Jim.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's an honor.
Oh man, like I said, I remember the first time I heard your testimony, really. And I mean, when I wanted to start the podcast, I'm like, I gotta get this guy.
Yeah.
Because you have such a powerful story where, in my mind, I think you beat some of the statistics.
Oh, for sure.
I know. Spoiler alert, I'm sure your faith had a little to do with that. We'll get into it.
A lot to do with it.
Lots to do with it. But basically, the premise of this podcast is everybody's fascinating. Everyone's got a story. You just got to ask the right questions.
Right.
And I want to promote guys getting together, sharing their stories, talking about life, coming out of isolation. There's great healing in that.
Yep, for sure.
I don't know if you agree or disagree.
I totally agree.
Let's get to it, and I'll just ask you the question of the day. What's your story?
That's a good one. I'll start with my childhood. It was, I guess, probably typical by today's standards. You hear a lot of horror stories about kids that don't have the mom and they don't have the dad, and they struggle with just every day. And for me, I had an alcoholic father who was extremely abusive. I had a drug-addicted mom who wasn't ever in my life. If I back up a little bit, my parents met when they were in high school, and I'm sorry. I just want to mute this.
Yes, that's fair.
It doesn't do it again.
It took me 2 or 3 podcasts to remember to put everything on Do Not Disturb. Okay. So we're making ground here.
Sorry.
Oh, no worries.
So my parents met in high school. My mom was 18. My dad was 17.
Yikes, that's young.
Yeah. And needless to say, they were young. And my mom was a Jehovah's Witness. Or at least from what I understand, her family were Jehovah's Witnesses. So okay. You can imagine how a unexpected pregnancy.
Ooh, what year is that?
1972.
Yeah, those are different times.
Yeah, totally
that was
different.
Not the norm.
Right.
That was okay.
Yeah, that was not the norm.
Even outside of a Jehovah's Witness family, that'd be a bit of a shock, right?
Yeah. Well, my grandfather, her dad, was very strict.
Okay.
Very strict. And my grandparents, my father's parents weren't like believers or anything like that. Like, I think my grandmother later on became a Catholic, but for all intents and purposes, like when I was a baby, there was, no God in the picture except from that side of the family. So they got forced to get married. Okay. It didn't last long. They got divorced, and I ended up with my grandparents because neither one of my parents could take care of me because they're both kids. They're both high school kids, right? So I spent the majority of the time as a baby early on with my grandparents. And
this was on your mother or father's side?
Yeah, on
both,
my mom.
Or?
Yep. Which is funny to me because when I think about, the life that my father had, he had both his parents.
Yep.
However, my grandfather was an alcoholic.
Okay.
And he was an abusive alcoholic.
Oh.
So my dad learned how to be an abusive alcoholic. And he was one of 5. So he had 2 brothers and 2 sisters. And so he was one of 5. And they to this day, like there's no relationship there. Like
Oh,
it's
hard.
yeah, it's really rough. But anyway, I grew up. I remember being with my grandparents most of the time, and then as I got older, I always had this desire. I was always like, I want my mom and dad to get back together,
Oh, yeah.
not knowing the backstory, because as a kid, you want your parents,
Yeah.
right?
No, I
And
can't.
of course, it never happened. My mom was off doing what she was doing. She was, getting into drugs and like just messing up her life that way. My dad, like, he was medicating with alcohol and he was off doing his thing. So I was with my grandparents. And then as I got older, I would off and on live with my dad, quickly learning the ugly side of my dad, right? Because he was unhappy. Think about it. He's a 20 something guy with a kid, working to survive. I remember being on welfare and eating the same thing every day, having my cereal with water, ketchup sandwiches. Like,
Wow.
yeah, it was it was crazy. I remember he would make like a big pot of American chop suey, and we would eat that all week.
All week, yeah.
All week, he would go out, and I'm like 10, 8, 9, 10. He's going out at night, coming home blazing drunk. Like, and some nights he would just go to bed and pass out. Other nights he would just take out whatever frustration and anger on me. And it was an everyday occurrence. If it wasn't, I'm going to go in the room and pass out, it's, I'm going to beat on you. So I had to, it was scary. It was really scary growing up. And I didn't know what to do. So the funny part is, the one thing that I remember is God was in the picture.
Okay.
Right. So I remember living in Lakeport with my dad, and that's just outside of Laconia. And this blue bus would drive by every Sunday. And every Sunday I would watch it go by. Right. Well, one Sunday I decided I'm going to go see what this blue bus is about. Happened to be a local Baptist church going around town picking up kids.
Really?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So I got on this bus one time. We went to Opeechee Park, and it's a beach. It's like a beach in the city. It's on Opeechee Lake. I think it's Opeechee Lake. And I got baptized, but I didn't know I was being baptized.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
How old are you at this point?
Maybe 10.
Yep.
Maybe. Probably, I think I might have been like 8 or 9, maybe between 8 and 10. And my dad like didn't know where I was. So obviously when I got home, he was pissed because, where were you? Because he was still passed out. Saturday night. So I remember as a kid, I would always try to find stuff to do just to get away from my dad.
Sure.
So like I saw that blue bus, I was like, oh, well, because there's a bunch of kids on. I'm like, what's going on?
Hey.
Like, where are you guys going? And so we go there, and they were doing baptisms, and I end up getting baptized. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't even realize it until later on in my life, you know. But I was like, oh my gosh, God was there. It was amazing. Like having that revelation that he already was in the picture and I didn't know it.
Yeah.
So, I get into my teens, and kind of living with my dad. And then one time in Concord, I was in high school. I think I was 15, 16, and I was out riding my bike with my buddy Ed, and we were riding around town, and my father, I happened to be driving by the American Legion, and my father was coming out, stumbling out of the place, and he starts mouthing off to me, and I start mouthing off back, because I'm like, dude, like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
I'm like, I was just driving by on my bike, and he's like, oh, you need to get home. And I'm like, it's 6 o'clock. And he's like, don't start mouthing at me. And I'm like, I'm not mouthing at you. I'm just saying it's 6 o'clock. I'm out on my bike. Like, what am I doing wrong? And he goes to hit me, and I blocked it. I stopped him from doing it, and I looked at him and I said, "No more."
Whoa.
And needless to say, he didn't take that too kindly, but he turned around, he walked back inside, and I was like, Eddie, my buddy was like, "Dude, that was amazing." I'm like, "I don't even know what just happened." He's like, "Let's get out of here." So we get out of here. A couple days later, I get home from school, and my dad was with his girlfriend, Debbie, and she had two daughters. So there was three of us, the four of us at the house waiting for Dad to come home. And it was early in the evening, and he comes in the door drunk, and we're cooking spaghetti, and we're getting ready to have dinner. And he comes in, and he's like, "Oh, what the heck is all this crap?" He's like going off about dinner or whatever. And we're just like, "Yeah, we're just making some spaghetti." And he's like, "You mouthing off at me?" And I'm like, "No." I'm like, "Dude, we're just making spaghetti."
Yikes.
So it was like, it didn't matter what I said or how I said it. He always took it as like a challenge or something.
Yeah.
And so I kind of got to the point where I almost didn't want to talk to him, or I avoided him, because any interaction with him would have the, possibility of ending up violent. And I didn't want to do that.
I mean, certainly not over spaghetti.
Right.
My gosh.
But it was just like that with him,
Yeah.
And I know a lot of it was the alcohol. I know a lot of it was just frustration with his life, because I knew that, he wasn't happy. He was never happy.
Mm.
The guy was never happy. So we have the spaghetti on the stove. We got silverware all lined up with the plates. And the water's boiling when he walks in. And he starts giving me the business, and I'm just like, "All right, what are we doing?" And he starts getting like really amped up on me, and I'm just like, "We're just getting ready for dinner. Like, what's going on?" And he's like, so he starts pushing me and all this other stuff. Then he picks up the silverware, and he like tries to throw it at me, and I move behind the wall, because it's like this little galley kind of kitchen, so you can kind of get out of the way real quick. And then he goes for the pot, and I'm like,
Come on.
I run upstairs. I lock myself in my bedroom. It's a second-story floor. I call my buddy Ed. I'm like, "Dude, you guys got to come get me." My dad, like at this point, he's banging on my door to try to get in my room. I have a softball bat that I don't even remember what it was from or where it was from, but it just happened to be in there. So I got my softball bat. I'm talking to my buddy on the phone. He's like, "What's that noise?" I'm like, "He's trying to break down my door." Like he was coming after me. So after a couple of minutes, he stops. My buddy Ed, Chris, they show up in Chris's car. I jump out the window, and I take off.
Yeah.
And I took off for a couple of days. Like I ran away for a couple of days, and I was staying with my buddy Eddie. And I go back home, and my dad's like, "Oh, you finally made it back, huh?" Not, "Oh, I'm sorry for what happened," or anything. It was just,
"Sorry, I almost threw a pot of boiling water at
I'm like,
you."
"He tried to kill me. Like, what is this?"
My gosh.
It gets better though. So, and I'm not saying all this to bash my father.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to give some perspective into like
This
the stuff
this
that
was
I had.
real life for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a couple days later, I'm sitting out in the front lawn with my buddy Eddie and a couple other people, and my dad comes home drunk again, and it's like, I think it was a weekend, because it was midday-ish, probably late afternoon, and we're all just hanging out. We're throwing a frisbee, and we're just hanging out, being a bunch of teenagers, just chilling. And he says something to me, and I'm like, "What?" I can't hear you, because he was like out by the house, and I'm out in the yard, And he's like, "Oh yeah?" He goes inside. He comes out with a friggin' butcher knife. I'm like, I looked at my buddy Ed. I'm like, "What has he got in his hand?" He's like, "Dude, he's got a knife." I'm like, "What is going on?" Right? So he starts walking towards me, and he's like, "I'm going to get you," and all this other stuff. I'm like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "I'm just hanging out, So we take off.
Yeah.
Again. And I take I end up spending a lot of time with my buddy Ed, because we were like best friends at the time. And he was just the guy that I would, you have those friends
Oh,
like
yeah.
when you're in your high school days, and it was just like the same group of friends that I hung out with all the time. Always ended up at Eddie's house, like on the couch. His parents knew our story, and they were like a second family to me.
Mm.
So needless to say, like I ended up after that, I went to my guidance counselor and I told her all the stuff, and she's like, well, you're not going home. And I'm like, what's that mean? She's like, well, you're going to stay with me and I'm going to talk to the state.
Wow.
Then I became a foster kid, right? For the last, I think, 2.5, 3 years of high school. I ended up with a really good family, and my grades went up. Everything was awesome. He taught me, Peter Dodge taught me how to drive his car, and let me take his car. And like, oh yeah, dude, it was like night and day. And I was like, so this is what it's like,
Wow.
And
So not to breathe, how long was that season? You said a few years?
yeah, it was like 2.5 years.
So 2.5 years. Okay.
Yeah.
Had that much of an impact.
Yeah.
Carry on.
Yeah. No, it was unbelievable because and I could talk to them. Like I remember just like talking to them about like stuff at school, and like it was a totally different ball game, dude. Like it was like I said before, night and day. It was so amazing to be able to come home and not have to worry about like my drunk father walking in and wanting to like go to battle every single day, and the direct impact of that, like I was a happier person. Like my grades went up. I was an A student all of a sudden. Go figure.
Yeah.
And it just, life was great, and then I went to college, and that ended up being a debacle, but not anybody's fault but my own.
Yeah.
But then I joined the Army. But before that, the reason I went in the Army was because I got a hold of my mom. And right after high school, I graduated, and I moved in with my grandparents again. That's what it was. I moved in with my grandparents. I lived with them for like almost, I think, a year or two. And then my grandfather was like, you got to go. So we had a knockdown, drag out. We didn't have a fist fight, but it was a yelling match. Like we screamed at each other, and I was like, I'm done with this. And I ended up moving in with my mom in Jacksonville, Florida. And the day I got there, I remember it was a 3-day bus ride. I got off the bus. I'm at the bus station. I knew she was there waiting for me. But the woman that showed up was not my mom. Like she was 100 pounds, maybe soaking wet. Like all her features were just all sunken in. I recognized the eyes, but it was not my mom, And I just remember being like, I was in shock, dude.
Yeah.
Like, it was really weird for me. So we go back to her house, and I made a boyfriend, and I took a shower, and I went to bed, and I cried myself to sleep. I was like, what am I doing here? I knew right then that I was not in the right place, and it was just like, it just came over me, and I was bawling, and I bawled, and I bawled, and I ended up crying myself to sleep, and I slept for a little bit. I tried to make the most of it for a couple of months. I got a job, and at the local Winn-Dixie, I was in the seafood department, so I was slinging crabs and all kinds of stuff, but it just never set right with me. I knew I was in the wrong place, and my relationship with my mom, like I was trying really hard to like reestablish some kind of a connection. Now my mom is in and out of my life like all my life, right? So I'm trying to establish something that I never had with her, but in the back of my mind, I see this woman in front of me, and I'm just like, who are you? I'm like, who are you?
It's hard.
And she's still on drugs.
Yeah.
Right. And I think the tipping point for me while I was there was when one night she got pretty wasted, and I think we were having a party for something, or it was just a barbecue or whatever. And she ends up having a meltdown about something, I don't know, that her boyfriend said or whatever. And then I was on the other side playing games with some of the other people, and she starts freaking out looking for me. And she's like, where's my baby? Where's my baby? All this other stuff. And I'm like, who is screaming like that? Right? Not knowing what's going on the other side of the house. And then I go around the corner, and she's like melting. And she's like, oh, my baby, there you are. Oh, I was looking for you. I'm like, Mom, I was on the other side of the house. At this time, I'm like 18.
Yeah.
All right. And she's like freaking out. So we finally get her to calm down, and I'm just like talking to her boyfriend, and like he's like, she's strung out. And
Yeah.
I'm like, awesome. He's like, yeah, she'll be fine, you know, whatever. So a couple days go by, and I'm out riding my bike after that, and I happened to come across, and I was out for a while. I pretty much was out all day, but I happened to come across a MEP station, and the MEP station is the place where like you and I would go to sign up for the Army.
Okay.
And I walked in, and I was talking to a recruiter, and I go, what do you guys got? Like, I want to get dirty. And he goes, I got just the thing for you. So he shows me Airborne Ranger School, and I'm like, sign me up.
Okay.
And he goes, okay, we'll sign you right up. He goes in the back room for a minute, comes back out, and he's like, I got no more slots for you in that, but I can get you into infantry school. And I'm like, how much different is it? And he's like, well, the only difference is you're really not jumping out of planes. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, all right. So I spent a couple hours there. I join the Army right there. I go home. I tell my mom. She freaks out on me. She's like, how dare you? And all this other stuff. And I'm like, what? I'm like, there's nothing here for me.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, I don't even know. I'm like, I'm 18 years old. You know, I wanted to get a college degree. I didn't do that. I'm like, I got to do something with my life. And I'm like, I can't work at Winn-Dixie.
Right.
You know, and I'm like, I'm thinking in the back of my brain, like, this is not where I want to be. You know, it hasn't felt right since I got here. And I just want to do something, you know? And so long story short, I end up in Georgia at Fort Benning and 13 weeks for infantry school. And then I end up in Germany at an OP4 unit. And we spend all of our time at the OP4 unit training other units, you know, so that was all during Desert Storm and Desert Shield. And I was like, you know what, I want to go fight for my country. And we were all told no. Our job training was more important than going out. And they had like this big assembly to tell us, no, nobody is leaving here to go over to Mogadishu in Somalia. You know, you're going to stay here, you're going to do your training. And then if you want to get out of that, you're going to either have to go to another unit or do your time and then re-enlist to, you know, do that. So I think that was the Lord also. You know, because I feel like if I had done that, it would have just taken my whole trajectory on a different course, and I wouldn't be where I am today. And be as blessed as I am today. Yeah. So.
Well, I mean, with the trauma you faced growing up, and then I imagine if you're in a war zone and your brother started dying next to you, and then you got to pull the trigger on somebody because it's me or him.
Yeah.
And those memories playing in your head, I can see how that could
mess you up a little bit.
That could have compounded.
Yeah, all the additional trauma that I had from my childhood. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I spent 3 years in Germany, and then I came home. And I came home a couple times while I was in Germany because my grandmother had passed away, and there was one other time, I think, for my best friend's wedding. And then
just to see a movie?
Yeah,
I'm just kidding. I had
yeah.
It's a dad channel. There's going to be dad jokes. Never saw it, I promise.
I never did see that movie.
I might have seen the end of it on TV once, but
I don't think I saw it. I know I didn't see it. Anyway, did my 3 years in Germany, and then I came home. And I had, a few jobs. I worked at a prison. I actually had a couple of jobs because I was just trying to like save up some money, and I was living on my own. And then what happened? I ended up in Manchester. Yeah. So I was living on my own for quite a while. Then I moved in with my sister. That didn't work out, and moved to Manchester, and I think it was for a job or something, and stayed in Manchester for a while, and then I eventually ended up meeting my wife, Michelle, at a nightclub of all places.
There you go.
And it was funny because she actually dated my roommate Craig at the time, and I was dating her best friend, and neither one of them worked out, but we remained friends.
Okay.
And so we remained friends for a while, and I just thought, I was like, this woman is absolutely gorgeous, and I have no chance. So if I can be friends with her, like, that's a big W for me, right?
Friendzone's not the worst thing in the world,
right.
At least you get to close proximity.
Yeah. So like we stayed friends for a while, and then eventually we ended up, being boyfriend and girlfriend, and we dated for a long time, and ended up getting married in 2004. We had been together, I think, for 5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. And right after that, we got pregnant with Maya 2 years later.
Okay.
And that's where everything changed for me. Like, everything changed, because
from what point? From the, oh, by the way, you got a kid on the way, or was it like what was that moment like when you first get the news?
What about Maya?
Yeah.
Well, the funny thing is, prior to that, it was, I want to say 2 weeks prior to that, prior to us finding out that we were pregnant, Michelle had started going back to church. Now, her parents and they went to church, and they had fallen away for a little while, but then they started going back because Dad got sick. And so they were like, we need to start going back to church. So they all started going back to church. And then, Michelle met me, and she wasn't, going to church at the time. She had kind of fallen away. And we met, and she wasn't going to church at the time, right? So we met at the nightclub. We have, 5 years together, and then she starts reading the Bible. And I'm like, what are you doing? And she's like, oh, I'm just reading the Bible, and I'm like, and at this point in my life, I am like one of the angriest people. Like, I was just angry. I woke up angry. I was angry all day. I'd go to bed angry. I was medicating with marijuana, alcohol.
Wow.
Like, I was clubbing. Like, I was just whatever I could get in my mouth to, like, get out of the reality of life, I was doing, right? Prior to meeting Michelle, I was going to raves. I was, like, heavy into ecstasy, cocaine, whatever else there was. If it was in pill form, it was in my mouth, But then when I met Michelle, like, all I was doing after that was, like, we would go clubbing and stuff like that, or I'd go out with my buddies and stuff like that, but I was still medicating.
Yeah.
Right. And at home, I always had pot and I always had beer, and I could kill a 12-pack in a night, no problem. Right. And I'd be smoking a couple of bowls. So I was pretty messed up. And then I'd get up, go to work, go home, and do it all over again. Right. Yeah. We got married in 2004. 5 years, 2009, I'm doing this stuff the whole time, right? And it got to the point where Michelle, and, like, it was ruining my marriage. Like, all the drinking, all the drugging, going out, being stupid, and sometimes with her, but most of the time without her. I was always with my friends doing that stuff, and it I guess she kind of came to that realization before I did, that she needed something else. And so she got back in the Word, started going to church. And when she first started going to church, I wouldn't go. I'm like, I'm not going in there. Like, what are you crazy? I had, no, God wasn't on my radar.
Sure.
I believed that there was a God,
Mm-hmm.
but it was never anything that I pursued, outside of the blue bus,
Right.
And even at that, I didn't even know what I was doing, but God was not on my radar. And I just continued to be angry, and I continued to go to work, and I continued to medicate.
So to be clear, all the drugs, all the alcohol didn't help with the anger issue?
It did not.
It did not help with the void that was the soul sucking void within you? Not a one, like maybe temporarily when it took your mind off of it, but it was still there waiting for you?
Yeah.
Just making sure. Okay.
Yeah. No,
and
one of the, yeah, dude, I was a mess. Like, one of the biggest reasons that I would do that is so I could sleep at night, and it didn't work.
Oh,
My brain was always going.
Yeah.
I would wake up so enraged, right? It was just unbelievable. And I could not sleep through a whole night ever.
yeah.
It was that bad. So I'm like, you know what? I'll get myself so messed up that my body just shuts down so I can sleep,
Right.
but it didn't work. But I kept going back to that well thinking, oh,
Maybe this time.
maybe this time it'll work. Never did. So anyway, Michelle starts going to church. I'm not going with her. And she comes home one day, and, she's kind of, you should come with me next week. It's really good. I'm like, yeah, that's not happening, But she keeps praying. She keeps reading the Word. She's getting back into it, and she's going to church regularly every Sunday. And at one point we had an argument because I'm like, what are you reading in that book? Like, what is so great about that book? And she takes me to Timothy 3, how father will be against father, brother against brother, all the warring nations. And like, she's like, all right. I go, okay, answer. That's what it was. I said, answer me this. I'm like, if God is so amazing, why is the world is the way it is now? So she takes me to 2 Timothy, and I read the verses, and I'm like, wow.
Describing exactly the,
Yeah.
like,
What's going on?
Yep.
And I'm just like, huh. I'm like, all right. Okay. I say, I tell you what, I'll go to church with you on Sunday.
Just like that.
So we go to church.
So, I mean, right there, like, it sounds like God spoke to you directly through the Word.
Yeah.
You might not have heard an audible voice.
Nope, not yet.
You might not have had an open vision, I'm not disparaging any of that. I'm just saying that's just as valid. And I think we're about to get into some fruit of it, where that's when I say God revealed to me, showed me, talked to me.
Yep.
It could be through a spouse, a friend, where they point to the Word and it answers exactly the question you just asked. You're like, huh.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was, dude. It was like my mind was blown. I was like, no kidding. I remember thinking to myself, that's crazy. I'm like, it just bullet point by bullet point described everything that was going on and who was against who and how it was happening. And I was like, wow, all right. I'm like, all right, you know what? I'll check this thing out. So the following weekend we go in there, and it was just kind of like, my walls were up, I was like, I don't even want to be here. This sucks. They were playing the worship music. It was kind of catchy. I don't even remember what it was.
Was I on drums?
Probably.
What year was it?
2009, I think.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
It's like I got married in 09.
I think it was 2009.
You sure it wasn't before?
2006.
Yep.
Because Maya was born in 06.
Okay, I was probably on drums.
Yeah. Yeah, it was 06. It was 06. We went again, and then I think it was the second or the third time we went. We walked in, we sat down, and Mike started playing I Can Only Imagine.
Oh.
And dude, the second that started playing, I could just feel it. like the Lord coming over me. I'm like, what is going on? I was freaking out.
Yeah.
Like legitimately, I was shaking. I'm like, what is happening right now? And I can just feel like all I can describe it is like the Lord just putting his arms around me. Oh, dude.
You already got me going.
Ugh.
And you don't have a lifetime in a childhood of like being in charismatic places or whatnot where like you just do no one told you this is what's supposed to happen. You just got wrecked.
I just and then the next thing I know, I am a blubbering mess, dude. Michelle's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "I'm good. I am so good. Just I'm good."
What happened?
And I'm like I'm bawling, and I can just feel the Lord's love all over me, and I was just like, "What is happening right now?" I could not wrap my head around it. I could not. And Michelle's got this little smile on her face, and I'm thinking to myself, what are you smiling at? Like, this isn't funny, you know, but I'm like, I'm a mess.
Yeah.
I'm a total, like, ugly crying, like snots, tears, the whole thing. And then I went home and I said to her, I go, how do I give my life to Jesus?
Jeez.
And,
wow.
Yeah. And so she's like, oh, what do I do? So she goes and gets this booklet from, I think it was, I can't even remember his name. Pastor Hagen.
Yep.
And it was like, they had the sinner's prayer in the back of the book, and she just walks me through it. And I gave my life to Jesus in my bedroom. Yeah. And with my wife. And that night, dude, I slept like a baby. It was the first night I slept through the entire night uninterrupted, like nothing. It was just, I woke up the next morning and I was like, I looked at her and I go, hey, I slept through the whole night. Like I didn't wake up once. And I'm sitting there and I'm like,
have I ever done that?
I'm not angry.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I was like, what just happened to me? You know, I'm still in like this like la la land of like discovering that I am not who I was the day before.
Just like that. Yeah.
Just like that. Like the Lord like delivered me right there in church. And I was like, and of course I didn't know that's what it was at the time, but I was looking back on it, I was like, he totally delivered me of my anger and like all the stuff that was on me in that moment. Like it was so overwhelming. You know, and I just remember being so happy. Yeah. Like totally the opposite of what I was the day before. And Michelle is just like, she's in awe. She's looking at me like she doesn't know who I am because I'm just like, hey, and I made her breakfast and I'm like, woo, you know, like, let's go. And it was just, everything was different. Everything was different.
It's kind of like one of those, when like you pray for God to move, you've heard how he moves, but when he actually does, you're like, I wasn't ready for that.
Well,
like,
and Michelle,
like, it really does work.
Like, my wife Michelle is like, it was an answer to prayer. She's like, I've been praying for you. Yeah. And I'm like, thank you so much. You know, I'm like,
I can't share enough about how much prayer affects people. Because I wouldn't.
It's real.
This conversation would be different.
Yeah.
Because I was like at a state of wanting to just jump into full blown atheism and just disavow God. Because long story short, I thought all my problems were caused by the church. Yeah. Because of the stuff I witnessed and this and that or whatnot. And really, there was a purge that needed to happen.
Right.
But and I got angry. And then raised in church, it was always a part of my life. And I'm like, you know what? Screw this. This is the problem. Yep. Praying mamas and praying wives are a force to be reckoned with. Yeah. Take some time. Yeah. Be diligent. But like, I got rocked. Yeah. Multiple times. And those questions I had, again, same thing. I'd get the word just opened up and all these things I wanted to bicker about, like he, answered directly through his word. I'm like, yeah. But it was more than just information. It became a part of me. And like, I developed this trust with him. Yeah. And this relationship and this point of no return, because I was kind of in and out, up and down. Yeah. Yeah. But I'm like, no, God, you're real. There's no debate now in my, like, there's, so there's no turning back now. Yeah. Fully credited to those that prayed on my behalf. Yep. And if it wasn't for them, who knows how that would have turned out.
Yep.
So
Yep.
it's like, that's
Yeah, it's
never gets old.
no. I mean, I look back. I'm just like it's still so amazing to me how it happened and how dramatic it was. And right after that, we found out we were pregnant, and Maya was
Sorry.
born.
Have you seen the movie? I can only imagine.
Yes.
Just, I just dawned on me. I'm like, some similarities there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Of like, it's interesting that song is what spoke to you.
Yeah.
where
Like
that was written out of a guy who witnessed a complete transformation.
to this day.
See the movie.
Whenever that song comes on, like I get welled up because I'm always brought back to like what the Lord did for me, you know, and I'm so grateful. And even more so because like I needed to get right
Yeah.
before having kids.
And it sounds like the timing was like, boom, kid.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Like it happened like right after that. Like
So now you're happy-go-lucky. You're sleeping.
I'm sleeping.
Okay, then you get the news. I got a baby
Yeah,
on the way.
I was so excited. Like, you know, she's like, I'm pregnant. And I'm like, oh, wow, are you serious? She's like, I'm pregnant. And I'm like, yes. I'm like, yes. Because I'm like, we're going to have a baby boy. We're going to play baseball together, blah, blah, blah. And then we found out it was a girl. And I was like, okay, that's awesome. Still my baby.
Yep.
You know, I'm like, it didn't make a difference. And we were so happy. And life was just, I mean, it was turned upside down.
Yeah.
It was turned upside down. But it had to be for me, you know, because where I was in my life was not a good place to bring a baby into, you
Sure.
know, like I didn't need to be my dad to my children.
Yeah.
You know, and when I got saved, one of the first things I actually did is I called my dad.
Wow.
I called my dad and I said, Dad, I need you to forgive me. I hated you. I said, but I gave my life to Jesus and I need you to forgive me for feeling that way about you. I'm like, I love you and I want us to be okay, you know? And he freaked me out because he let me say all that. And then and then he said to me on the phone, he's like, Mike, if anybody needs to apologize, it's me. I wasn't a very good dad. And I just lost it. I lost it. And I'm like, all right, well, you know, I just had to let you know that because I do love you. I'm not mad at you. I forgive you. And I want us to be okay. And he's like, we're good. We're good. And
That's
I'm like,
amazing.
all right. And I still talk to my dad. He's still an alcoholic. But I know that the reason that he is the way he is because he doesn't see himself the way God sees him. You know?
Yep.
I used to be so angry with him, and I used to like just, I hated him for what he did to me. You know, like all the abuse, all the trauma gone when Jesus came into my life.
Yeah, I mean, and again, with human reasoning, we want to justify it. Like, well, you have every reason to feel that way,
Right.
and you're going to carry that with, like, sounds like you forgave him. You're able to release it.
Yep.
So now you
I
don't have
gave
to
it
carry
Jesus.
that garbage for any reason.
Right. Yep.
And now you're not holding that over his head.
Right. So now when I talk to him, now when I visit him, and now so I'll give you a story. The first time he came over for Christmas was probably about 5 years ago.
Wow.
And we invited him over for Christmas, and I wanted to meet with him to just lay down the ground rules.
Yep.
You know, I'm the dad. I'm the covering of my family.
It's my house.
So I'm like, you know, I wanted to meet with you, and we're at the American Legion. He's got a pitcher of beer in front of him, and I was there for maybe an hour and a half. Jimmy, the dude put down like 3 pitchers of beer in front of me, right? The whole time I'm looking at him all I can do is have compassion.
Yeah.
I feel like my heart was breaking because I'm like, Lord, let him see who he is, because I know that's why he is the way he is, because he never had a dad to model what a father is supposed to look like. Everything I know about being a dad, I learned from my Lord and Savior, Wow. One of the fears that I used to have prior to giving my life to Christ was, I don't want to bring a kid into this crappy world.
Yeah.
Plus the fact that I'm a mess. I'm like, how can I be a dad? I'm like, I'm not doing that. Why bother? It was like, sweep it under the rug, forget about it. Out of sight, out of mind. But after being delivered and establishing my relationship with Christ, and now having gone through what I've gone through and being, releasing all of that garbage and all of that vomit, it was just being able to sit across from him and just feel God's love for him, and just know that he has no idea about his identity.
Yeah.
It was like a total mind shift for me. And just knowing that it's not too late for him either.
Yep.
Like I was always of the mindset, like, I'm not good enough. Like, what does God want for me? But he wants all of us to be free. He wants all of us to be free, man. And sitting across from him at that moment, I was so overwhelmed with like the Father's love and the Father's compassion, and not an ounce of anger in me, and just looking at him and being like, oh Lord, get him. Get him. I want him to be free, because he's just so, he's drowning. And, there's times like I still to this day, I believe he's going to get saved. I'm praying for him every day. Like, I want to see him released. I want to see him free. I want him to give it to God and just walk out the rest of his life as a son, and know that, our earthly father didn't do it, but our heavenly Father will do it, and he can, and he does, and just knowing that that's available to me that's a W. Like, yeah. I walk in that belief, knowing that God can do it, that there is another side for him, that there is freedom for him. And like, all that stuff that happened in the past, that's in the past. Like, yeah. I'm not interested in, bringing up old crap or any of that other stuff. I want it all. It's all brand new, dude. It's all brand new, out with the old and with the new. And I know it's available, and I tell my dad, I'm like, there's a better way.
It's amazing because, like, you go from the lifestyle you were living, knowing like this ain't working, but what else am I going to do?
Right.
To like, how about we don't go to church ever? Because no. To, okay, I'll go. It's not just church. You said, it's accept an invitation. And you gave God, an inch?
Yeah.
Just show up in the building, and I'm going to, we encounter you.
And he's like, that's all I need.
You just give me that little bitty, and it's amazing what he can do. And how long is I can only imagine? 3-4 minutes?
Yeah.
It's not a very long song.
No, it's about 4.5 minutes, I think. But it was 4.5 minutes of just tears and snot, and like, I was shaking, and I'm shaking uncontrollably, and Michelle just going, what is happening? But she knows what's happening because she's got a little smile on her face, and, and then.
So in all of this, we're talking about, okay, there's, that release, but then that leads into humility. Like, I need Jesus. Yeah. I'm not doing the greatest job here. How do I have Jesus in my life?
Yep.
Now you're responding with compassion in situations where most would be like, nah, screw that guy.
Yeah.
So and now you have hope.
Yep.
On behalf of him. And I'll tell you, compassion isn't always the most fun feeling, but I'll take that 1,000 times over angry, bitterness, jealousy, any of that, because compassion, it's a characteristic, I believe, from God.
Absolutely.
In addition to hope.
Yeah.
which it's amazing what the human, either soul, spirit, whatever it's take. When you add hope in the mix, it's amazing how far a human being can go
Yeah.
and what God can do.
Yep.
Just a bit of hope.
Oh yeah.
So-
He only needs like just a little.
So,
Yeah.
okay, so now you got a baby. Baby's born. Hello. What's that like, that adjustment? Because, like, I'm not really ready to have kids. Like, yet nothing can prepare you then. I got this
Yeah.
fragile
Now you get a
human
little.
being. Actually, for me, it was as soon as I watched her come, watched both of them come out.
Oh yeah.
But when Julie came out, I was like, it was a flash. Those, you almost couldn't record the amount of time it took me to be like, and I'm a dad now.
Yeah.
Everything changed in that blink of an eye.
Yeah.
What was that like for you?
When Maya was born, I saw all three of my kids be born, and when Maya was born, it was, man, it's indescribable. I was happy, and I don't want to say scared, but apprehensive a little bit. But I was just so happy to have like this little human, and you talk about the love that you feel like immediately, like it's totally different, man. It's totally different. And it was unexpected, because I'm like, I'm anxious to see my daughter, and not in like anxious, but I was like, oh, I'm like
Excited.
waiting. I'm like, she's almost here, I'm getting really excited, getting amped up. And then she comes and I'm just like, wow, this is amazing. I'm like, this is my baby.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a dad. I'm like, I am a dad. And then like, I'm just thinking about like all the stuff that we're going to do together. I'm thinking about, like all the stuff we're going to do together, like, playing the games and all the dances and stuff. Like all this stuff is running through my mind now. And it was just like, wow, like I'm a dad, like this is a big deal. And I'm thinking to myself, I want to be the best dad for this little girl.
Yeah.
I just want her to know who her dad was and is, good, bad, or ugly. I want her to know everything about me. She's going to know my story. She's going to know my background. Like, I don't want anything to be hidden from her. I want her to know that I love her. That's never going to change, no matter what she does. But I'm her dad.
Yeah.
I'm her dad first, and I'm her friend second, because I don't ever want there to be a time where she looks at me like one of her friends, because I think parents nowadays kind of make a mistake where they try to be more of a friend than a parent.
Yep.
And it always ends in disaster. It always ends in disaster. And I'm like, that's not going to be me, like they're going to know that I'm dad and that I love them, but I'm dad,
Yeah.
I'm your friend, but I'm dad first.
Dad first.
You know what I mean? If that makes sense.
Oh, I get it.
Because I just, for me.
Because you're still emotionally available. You're still going to play games. You're going to have fun.
Yep.
Don't lose sight of the fact that I'm dad.
Right. Right.
Because, push comes to shove, I'm taking the bullet.
Yep.
I'm protector. Like no one messes with you
Yeah,
because
dude.
I'm dad.
Like we're the pastor and the priest of our home.
Right?
We're the protector. Like we're the provider.
If anyone's starving, it's me first.
Right. But the most important thing for me was just having that relationship.
Yeah.
And just having her know that, when things get rough, I'm here. You can talk to me. Like all those things that I didn't have growing up, I was like, I want her to have it unquestionable. And I want her to know that.
Did you feel worried that because of, were you worried about being a father at all with your upbringing? Like, was there any fear of like, can I measure up, or was it more of like?
Of course. But it wasn't. I mean, the good thing about it was there. There was always, kind of like, am I doing this right?
Yeah.
but I go back to the word, and I'm like, what does the Lord say about being a dad?
Yeah.
And all the fruits of the Spirit, all those things I want to be for her. And I want her to see Jesus in me,
Yeah.
I didn't realize that that's what I was doing at the time, because I was still, a baby Christian, but
Yeah.
I wanted to model all of those things for her because it wasn't modeled for me. And I remember how it affected my life, but I always said, like, I want to be the best dad that I can be for my kids, and the only way I can do that is with Jesus.
Yeah.
I mean, he modeled the Father.
Yeah.
And I always go back to that. I'm like, what would Jesus do in this situation? Like, if he was standing with me right now, how would he deal with it?
Yeah.
And just really trying to be Jesus in as a dad, I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, I mean, as you're talking, I'm like, I mean, that's kind of
The point,
the point.
Right? Yeah.
And I'm talking about that's an effective form of evangelism. An effective form of parenting altogether. As you said, you wanted to model it, which means you set the example by being it.
Mm-hmm.
Not saying you didn't have rules, not saying, strict or not strict. But first and foremost, you're modeling it, you're doing it, you're being it.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to just laying a bunch of strict ground rules and then just that being, it's a big difference because kids are crafty. They'll get around ground rules.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you're modeling it too, it's like whether they follow suit right away or not, that example is there. That gets burned in our brains.
Yeah.
Where I said this recently, where the hard drive's always going from age of birth, I'd say. The hard drive's, the processor gets upgraded along the way.
Right.
It replays the memories in the hard drive with a new perspective of like, wow, my dad, I get him now. I understand. Like, wow, that was actually the right way to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, he did that because he loved me, not because he was being a jerk. Like, so it's like, whether they see it or not, if you're modeling it, man, it's coming back on you in a good way.
Yeah, and there's fruit. There's tons of fruit. I mean, you know it. So back to when Maya was born, like, it was just, the responsibility came real.
Yeah.
It became really real for me that, like, I have this baby, I have to be her dad, and I need to be, like, the best dad. I just need to be the best dad for this baby. Like, I have to. Like, it's now part of my purpose, and there's always, like, there was, early on, it was like, I didn't know what I was doing, and we would, try to figure it out along the way. But Michelle is such an amazing mom, that, she taught me a lot, and it was our first kid. So we were just kind of like, doing the best we could, but it all worked out.
You fly without a net. We learn on the fly. Yep. Like, that's
yeah.
We can read the books and do it, but like, it's not. It helps.
Yeah.
But you got to put, rubber's got to meet the road, and you got to.
Yeah, there's a lot of doing. Yeah. But it was amazing. Like, I was just so happy to finally be in that capacity. Because I don't know. It was just, I think deep down inside, it was something that I really wanted to do without realizing it until it actually happened, and then it happened, and I was like finally, but it was amazing, a little bit of, how are we going to do this, and then you start thinking about, like, okay, so, I need to make X amount of dollars, and you start thinking in a worldly way, and you almost have to turn that off and just be like, I'm a dad.
Yeah.
I'm a dad. This is amazing.
Enjoy
I got this
the
little
ride.
baby human. Like, she's amazing. She's healthy. Let's bring her home.
Yeah. Sure, the
And
life dynamic changes a little bit.
a lot.
A little
a
less
lot.
sleep for a little while, but like, and you hear that, but like, is that a reason not to have a kid that you're gonna lose a little? How bad was that? Is it?
For me, it wasn't bad. For Michelle, for Michelle, it was a little rough because, you know, early on the baby sleeps like right next to mommy
Yep.
for the feeding and stuff like that.
That was my like. I was adamant like. When she cries, I get up. I'm gonna get the baby, bring her to you. I'll change the diaper. I'll put it like, 'cause I can help with this.
Yeah.
I couldn't do nothing during the pregnancy
Yep.
besides go to Hannaford's, which is our grocery store, about 95 times a day. And
Right.
I'm not complaining.
Yeah.
I'm like, I can help. Eggs, okay. Wait,
Yeah.
no, not eggs. I said this the last time. Don't make egg salad when your wife is pregnant. I've just got to restate the important facts.
Yeah.
But yeah, I got the request. I'm like, I'm out.
Yep.
You know, it was a joy of me because I can help.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, I mean, a lot of that, you're absolutely right. I'm like, she just pushed a human out of her body.
Uh-huh.
I can't do that.
No.
But I can make breakfast. I can change diapers. I can go to the store.
Got pretty good at it.
All that. Yeah, like, amazing, dude. I'm still wicked good at
Do
it.
you ever feel like you're in the pit crew?
Oh, for
Like
sure.
NASCAR, like,
oh yeah, dude. Like, and I was like, but I can do laundry. I can do the dishes. Like, I can do all this stuff. I can't do that, and I can't feed the baby, but I can do all this other stuff. And so your brain just like, it was just like, okay, this is what I got to do, you know. And then I had the best time feeding the babies. That was so much fun for me because they're just crazy little gremlins when they're, you know. They're like doing is spitting it out, throwing it, rubbing in there. You know, I mean, that was probably the most fun for me was feeding them.
They said babies. You have 3.
Yep.
And if there's more to the story, if we're gonna do a part 2, I'd love it. But I want to get to I want to get through the kids and then my big grand finale question.
Mm-hmm.
But what was it like for you, baby number 2 on the way?
So it's
On the way and like, okay, you have the baby. What was that kind of like for you? Because I got something.
we were
Yeah.
hoping for a boy. And it was a girl, but we were still wicked excited.
Yeah.
My wife named both the girls, and I named Gabriel. And well, she came up with the names for both the girls, and then we agreed on the name for Gabe. It didn't matter to me.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, we could have called him Horseshoe or something, and I would have been fine with
Yeah.
it, you know, whatever. You're
I'm
still
a boy.
beautiful. But yes, so we got pregnant with Sydney 2 years later, and it was amazing. Like, we get another little baby girl. Maya was so happy to have a baby sister.
Oh, that's awesome.
So, like, I was happy for her and
you
happy.
can see, like, they're like,
Yeah.
they might as well have been
They're
twins.
They're best friends.
Because
Yeah, I mean, they get that a lot too. Are you guys twins? I don't see it, but like
I
other people,
mean their relationship.
yeah,
Like how they do things together and they're not like they just, at
Yeah,
least
they're
from what I
tight.
see, you know,
They're
in
tight,
social
yeah.
gatherings, but like they're not
All
like,
3 of them
oh,
are.
you're here too. Like
Yeah.
they're like twins in terms of like
Yeah.
from what I
yeah,
the relationship.
it's amazing. Like that's one of my biggest victories as a dad is all 3 of my kids. They just love each other, man. It's amazing.
They're tight.
Yeah.
My worry, because I remember praying about this and I got my answer kind of like, not right away, but I was like, I can't get another kid on the way. Like, how does that work, Lord? Like, does my love for them now split like 50-50? Like she gets 50% of me and like how does that work? And then it just dawned on me. I'm like, no, you just increase your capacity to love.
Yeah.
Like you love them both fully, unconditional. Like just, I'm like, your capacity expands. I was like, whoa,
Not
okay,
just that,
that's
but
neat.
Your relationship with each one of them is different.
Yeah.
You know, because they're different people.
They are.
They're totally different people. Like Maya and Sydney, 2 totally different people. And it's so amazing to me how different they can be, yet they come together like 2 puzzle pieces, you know, and it's like, because I was just like, oh, kind of the same thing. I'm like, am I gonna have favorites? Like that's weird.
How do I?
Know? I'm like, Maya's my first, like, like, but you're absolutely right. Like the Lord just gives you that capacity as a dad, just like he does. I mean, think about all the people in the world,
Mm-hmm.
you know, in his capacity. Like, he does that for us as fathers. You know, he opens us up, and it's like, wow, I love you so much. Like, I can't even put it into words. And I love you so much, I can't even put it into words. It's pretty wild.
Mm.
It's wild how that happens. Yeah. So, Sydney showed up 2 years later, and that kid, she is wild. Yeah. She's wild. In a fantastic way. Like, Maya is a lot like me.
Yeah.
You know, she's type A, she's a go-getter. Like, she's just like, she needs a challenge, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sid is a goofball. That girl, man. But she's real funny though, because even as a baby, like, she would just stare at you
Yep.
and like just take you in. And people would always be like, is she okay? Because all she does is like stare. Like, she's figuring you out.
She's sizing you up.
She's totally she still does that, dude. It's hilarious. And it's like, you know,
Because she's quiet.
yeah,
And I'm realizing, like, was she shy?
a little bit.
Maybe a little bit. But then now I'm looking back, I'm like, son of a gun. She
She
sizes
sizes
people up.
everybody up, dude. She's so funny like that. And then if she thinks that you're okay, you see that other side of her, and you're
Yep.
like, whoa, what is going on with you? You're
Where'd this come from?
wild.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. Yeah.
Also
no.
an incredible performer, like both her kids. But I remember she was the lead in Elf, and like, you know, talk about Mike doing I Can Only Imagine. She sings this song from Elf. I'm like,
Oh my gosh.
because just the presence and power. But she's got that performance.
They're
I was
so
like,
talented. Yeah. They're
you
so
know.
talented. Yep. So we had Sid 2 years later, and then we had a miscarriage
oh,
after that.
that's hard.
Yeah. It's funny though, because Michelle has dreams about the baby.
No way.
Yep. She's up there with Nana, or he's up there with Nana.
Yep.
Yep. She's had 2 dreams about this little blonde haired kid up there running around with
Come
mom.
on.
Yeah. It's wild, dude.
Yeah.
I look forward to meeting him. It's going to be amazing. And then, so we had a miscarriage shortly after that, but then we got pregnant like almost immediately after that. And when we got pregnant, we brought it to the Lord, and we prayed about it, and we said, Lord, you know the desires of our heart. The desires of our heart is to have a boy, and we would love to have a baby boy. And if it's your will, then let it be done. And shortly after that, we found out we were pregnant with Gabriel.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a little different for me.
So that was one of the questions, because
it was different because like I expected a girl.
Yep.
You know, everybody's like, oh, if you have 2, you have 3. If you have 3, you have 4. And I'm like, no. I'm like, the Lord knows the desires of my heart. I want a boy. We wanted a boy. We both wanted a boy. And when we found out we were having a boy, we were like, dude, the Lord heard us and he answered. And that's why I trust him. You know, not to quote a song, but that's basically how it was. Like, we petitioned the Lord and he heard us.
Yep.
And he answered our prayers. And
still doing that. It's in the book of Genesis.
Yeah.
It's
wild.
What is it? First Samuel. There's a little bit of that action too.
Yeah.
You know, some guy named Samuel.
Yeah.
Very important prophet actually. So that's like, God still hears those prayers. Imagine that.
Yeah, it was. When we found out we were having a boy, like, we looked at each other like, holy Moses, like, this is like, he answered our prayer.
Yeah.
You know, and it was, I mean, when Gabe showed up, it was wild because he came out and he was like, you know, looks like a little baby alien, you know, 9 pounds, 9 ounces, just a porker. And
Jeez.
The nurse takes him over to the warming table and he's freaking out. And I just got really close to him and I just started talking to him. And slowly he started to calm down. Like, he recognized my voice, dude. And I was just like,
so cool.
I was welling up. I'm like, my son already recognizes my voice. Because I used to talk to him all the time when he was in the womb. And that kid never stopped moving. Like, he was so rough on Michelle. Because he would never stop moving. He just never stopped moving. And the day he was born, like that happened. And I was just like, oh, wow, this is so amazing.
Mm.
It's so like, I still remember it like it happened yesterday. And then, I start thinking, I'm like, oh, I'm thinking about like the bike rides and the baseball games and, all of the stuff that we're going to do. And I remember thinking in that moment, I'm like, I have a son. I have a son.
Yeah.
And just being so overwhelmed with that love of a father and a son. I don't know how to describe it. Like, I love my girls and I love my son, but for me, it's like, it's different for each one of them.
Yeah.
But still, like, just so.
I think with your history, too, the fact that, like, I mean, you broke the mold.
Yeah.
Big time. And again, it was the Lord.
Yeah.
But you opened yourself up to him and allowed him. So that's, you have a role to play in that, and you didn't give into it.
Yeah.
You broke the mold, and now there's fruit from there.
Yeah.
And with the example you've set and the stability you provided, now your family line has changed forever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you done did good, and he's a constant reminder of that. But you know, like there's such a victory and story in there.
Yeah.
But it's also like it's kind of cool to see the timing of the Lord, like before you're first. How like, hey, it's time for you to meet me.
Yeah.
Things are gonna get pretty crazy for you.
Things are gonna get real, brother.
It's gonna get awesome.
Yeah.
We're gonna do a little tweaking.
Yeah.
But it's so cool, and it's a huge part of. I mean, when I started this podcast, I'm like, gotta have Mike, because your story is unique, but there's a lot of similarities with people who were raised in very terrible situations.
Yeah.
And another thing that really stuck out too, when your time in foster care, you one of the points to keep driving home, you were given a voice to just talk.
Yeah.
You didn't, you just share your day.
Yeah.
Just open up.
Yeah.
Amazing how like that was such an impactful time in your life.
Yeah.
And I get that that's, I'm cherry picking.
Yeah.
But that's what I want this podcast really, promote fatherhood, because it's amazing.
Yeah, it is.
But also just for men to hear like it's manly to open up, be vulnerable.
Yep. And pray.
And pray.
And pray. Yeah, you got to pray for your kids, man.
Got
you got
to
to pray for your wife. Yep, absolutely.
But let's land the plane with my favorite question. We get to the time machine, the 1.21 gigawatts full power.
Okay.
You go back in time.
Yep.
Visit yourself the day your first kid is born. What do you tell yourself? And if it's more than one thing, 10 minutes, like what's a couple things you tell yourself?
Love extravagantly. And don't hold anything back from them. Let them know exactly who you are, good, bad, and ugly. And let there be no questions. Just leave it all, just leave it all out on the table. Let them know exactly who you are, what you went through, which I've done in my own life, because I think it's so important that the children know who their parents are, that they know what they went through, and that they have an idea of who these people are that are trying to lead me. That I even tell my kids, I'm like, look, it's not always going to be perfect or be right. I said, but you're going to know that I'm trying to do the best I can. And that I do it because I want you to be the best person you can be. Always in line with what the Lord says, because my advice isn't the best advice. The Lord's advice is always the best advice. Like his plans are better, way better than you can ask, think, or imagine. And
yes, sir.
He will never lead you wrong. And I think it's so important that you have that relationship with your children. and it's raw. It's raw.
Mm.
You know,
I love that. Yeah.
it has to be
I love
raw.
that.
It has to be raw, and it has to be real. You
Yep.
know, like no room for the enemy to get in there and start twisting and turning and pushing buttons and doing all this stuff. Like, just let them know, like, this is it. Like, this is me, good, bad, and ugly. And, you know, what you see is what you get. Like, I'm not somebody else at church. I'm the same person at church as I am at home, as
Yep.
I am at work, as
Yep.
I am everywhere. I'm that same person.
Bingo.
I'm that same dad, you know, that you're going to see everywhere. It's not going to be different just because I'm in a different building or whatever. Because, you know, I would see that growing up and I'm like, wait a minute, wow, what are you doing right now? Who are you, you know? And I just, you know, this is me all the time, you know, and I want them to know that, you know what, my dad's not a fake. He's the real deal, whether it's something I agree with or not. You know, that's just my dad, you know?
Well, it's funny. It's what you set out to do.
Mm-hmm.
I see the question, what would you tell yourself? You would tell yourself exactly what you did.
Yeah.
And that's not arrogance. That's not what that is. I'm like, you saw it work.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's your secret sauce because your kids are amazing.
Yeah.
They're entertaining.
Yeah.
They're fun to be around.
Yeah.
They're very accepting too.
Mm-hmm.
Not an ounce of bully in them.
No.
I see them in group settings. Everyone's invited. They treat everybody with respect.
Yeah.
You know, everyone's part of the family with them.
Yeah.
You know, you've set an amazing example, and it worked. You and Michelle, obviously.
Yeah.
But I've been blessed to see them, especially over the past few years, being a part of the church we go to, Zeal.
Yeah.
To be able to kind of, and again, I get too much credit, or I want to make sure I don't, because I maybe took them under my wing with worship. All I did was see what was in them
Mm-hmm.
and help them see what's in there,
Yeah.
and they saw it, and they're running with it, and now it's like,
And we're so grateful.
my
dude,
gosh, are they
because,
amazing?
I mean, we would see it, and I would tell them, I'm like, you know what, you should just go for it. Like, you have the desire. Like, you love to sing, you love to perform. I mean, Maya was a dancer for years.
Yep.
And then she got into singing, and then, you know, she was always like, oh, I want to try out for this or do that. And I'm like, well, why don't you try out for the worship team? Mommy's on the worship team.
Why not?
Why not? You know, and then you came along and like started to kind of like, you know, light that fire a little bit. And it was like, it took off, dude.
I showed them how to play with the buttons. Now
Right.
they play with the buttons.
Yep.
Fast forward, Maya's leading an adult worship team.
Yep.
Like, in Zeal, it's not a walk in the park.
No.
There's a lot of moving parts, and you fly without a net.
Yeah.
Okay. And then Sydney, this past Sunday, I asked her, did you wake up this morning and be like, how do I make James cry? Okay. Leads that song, blow the roof off the place. You know, it's just super anointed.
Yeah.
But then she proceeds to share, like, you know, for those, you know, struggling or dealing with this, you know, and it wasn't a phony, you know, like, I find out like later that morning, she said like, yeah, well, it was a rough morning. I wasn't feeling it. I was kind of, you know, I'm like, and you press through the doubt, and what happened, you know, people got liberated and set free that morning. There was a lot going on that morning for me too. And I needed like that was special. Yeah. That whole thing just took my eyes like right on Jesus, reminded me of how amazing he is.
Yeah.
So I'm stepping into some new things,
Yeah.
you know, and it was a stone in a sling. All I need is a memory of a victory, like a stone in a sling, that stone that took the giant down.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, she just rocked that.
Yeah.
Gabe got the rhythm for sure. I got to spend some time with him, and I'm like, that kid's got it.
Yeah, he's got it.
If you spend some time, I don't throw that around lightly, because then I have to eat my words, but I'm like, kid's got it.
Yeah.
So it's like
he does, if he wants to apply it.
Yeah, and that's but I mean, I've seen it. Once that spark catches, you know, it's awesome. Quick little plug. You got a business.
I do. Yeah.
Also, quick brief thing about that? And then...
It's Antioch Professional Cleaning. We came up with the name Antioch because it's out of the Book of Acts.
Yep.
From the Antioch Church, and that is the church in which believers were first referred to as Christians. And
okay.
The story of behind that, the name, is my wife and I both prayed independently, and both came up with the name.
Get out of here.
Yeah. So I was like,
get out of here.
God breathed.
Yep.
I've been doing it for 8 years, and I've been doing it by myself. But we're starting to expand, and we do all of residential and commercial in southern New Hampshire. So
now I've dealt with some places I've worked with just god awful cleaning companies. Mm-hmm. Simply, you could see they just don't care. I've seen you take care of our church. I've seen Zion when one of my kids went there. Like, you pay attention to detail.
Yeah.
You don't cut the corners. Quality is top notch.
Yep.
I'm going to link, I think, your Facebook page.
Yeah.
I'm going to link that in the description. So if you got some cleaning needs, get in touch with this guy. You will not be disappointed.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Thank you so much.
No, thank you.
Like, when I do these, and this one especially, it becomes surreal, like having these conversations. Like, I kind of forget, like, I'm recording this, because it's just in the moment, and like something powerful's happening, and I know there are so many people that need to hear this.
Yeah.
That are gonna get hope and strength, and we're ready to just be done and be like, you know what?
Yeah.
Either let's give this Jesus thing a try, or at least let's carry on further.
Yeah.
Quitting's not an option. You know. Obviously, I recommend Jesus because he's amazing.
He is amazing.
I gotta call like I see it, and that's why we promote it. But it's an honor to have you share your story.
Yeah,
and
thanks.
Of course, if there's things we left off the table, part 2, let me know.
Yeah,
have you on a heartbeat.
Yeah, anytime, man. I love it.
Let's do the quick fist bump. Thank you, guys. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Please like and share, subscribe. Let me know in the comments what you think. You guys take care.